Well, a lot happened in phase one, and I forgot a few things. So let's pick up the loose ends. I removed all the back seat fixtures and hardware because when it came to storing stuff underneath the rear seat here, the straps bolted to these two bolts back here was causing me a headache as far as how I could easily and sufficiently pack underneath this couch. So those came out. Then the next thing was that I had a problem with my stove where only one of the two burners worked, and that wasn't going to cut it. So they were tested, and yep, one burner was plugged. So that valve had to be replaced. Then probably one of the more important things was I had to have my CO2 and my propane gas detectors replaced, because on my initial first trip down the coast into the redwoods, and because I had a piece of crap for a coach battery that was weak, the monitors were set to have this ear splitting beep 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 every 90 seconds for a low battery. And when you're going down the doggone 6-lane freeway and you just can't pull off and silence the darn things, which I tried several times, it gets to the point where you think your head's going to split if it hears another one of those beep beep beep. Well, it got to that point, and I just pulled off the freeway, turned off the engine, went back there, and I literally ripped them things right out of the wall. And I had peace and quiet for the rest of the trip. Well, those had to be put back in. They were from 2007, so I figured, well, why not upgrade? So I got newer ones put in, and they work great because now I got a battery that works great. Anyway, I also put in a new water pump because the one that came with this thing I was having suspicions about and didn't want to get somewhere and not have water because the pump went out. So I did that. Anyway, this is all about phase 2 improvements. Now, I did these in 4 phases because I wanted to spread them out and take a trip after each phase was complete to test things out, see how they work, what needed tweak, what needed adding. So anyway, this is my story for phase 2. Now, I've seen RVs because I've done a lot of research over the past couple of years before I retired and before I ever committed to buying an RV. And people have come up with all kind of ways to block off their doors, their windows, and that to keep bugs out. Now, I've seen people take screen doors and hanging screen Velcro things they used at their patio doors back home and put them in their RVs, and that's all well and fine, but for the long term, which is how I think, play the long game, that wasn't going to cut it, especially with 2 active dogs wanting to go in and out, in and out. So I did my research, as I do for everything before I spend my money, and I found that a company in Canada called Rolf makes these special custom-made bug screens for my type of RV. They make them to fit the make and the model and the year. So they were a little expensive, not as cheap as you can go as far as taking something from your home patio sliding glass doors and gluing it in. The nice thing about the screens, custom-made screens, was that they work just like the screens at home on the sliding glass doors. They still allowed the dogs to go in and out at free will, even with their 15-foot leads, which they don't need at home, of course. But then the back one here, right now, I don't know if you can see it, but that's all screen. So I can open up the rear doors and have airflow through my rig to keep it nice and cool. Also, what you don't see down here behind me is a flap, a privacy flap that zips up and fills the whole back. So I don't have to mess with the doggone curtains on each window back there whenever I want to have privacy. I just zip the flap up, and I got privacy and darkness at night. I zip them down. I have this, which you see, and then if I open the rear doors, I have total ventilation through my rig. And if I put the screens down on the sliding door, then I'm bug proof with perfect ventilation. I can put the bed out like I've done and just lay here and just enjoy the flow of fresh air through here and look out and see the world. It's great. Because of where I had planned on going, I decided, well, you know, I better try to cover all the bases. So I had a Wii Boost installed. Plus, I also got a Verizon hotspot, so I have a secure Wi-Fi network for my laptop. And both of them have been very useful. You know, they're totally different, but they're under the same Verizon coverage with ultimate data and everything like that. And I think it's worth it, especially if you're out in the boonies like we are. You know, we don't hang around cities and towns and stuff like many other YouTubers that don't seem to want to get away from civilization do. So a Wii Boost and a Verizon hotspot or something like that, I would say, hey, if you're serious about traveling for months at a time, do it. Another big thing I saw was my coat closet. Now, yeah, it's nice. It's you know, it's quaint, but it was a waste of space. I had my cupboards packed of stuff, and I had to find a better way to reorganize and spread out what I had. And the coat closet was one of the keys to that problem. I first took everything out, and my first thought was to get those wire-made racks that you see at Home Depot that people put over their washer and dryer. And I got those. I measured them and cut them to fit. And then I got little clips for the channels I had to put in to snap them in. And then I just slipped the wires in with the little bent part up facing out to keep things from sliding out. Well, it looked good and sounded good in theory, but when I put my clothes in there, like I had one shelf for socks and underwear, then t-shirts and shirts, and then pants and shorts. Well, when I got in there and tried to get them out, they'd get caught in the wire spaces, and it just did not work. It popped the shelving off the little clips that were holding them on, and was more of a pain of having to put everything back in. So that didn't work. So then I decided, okay, I need to think this out a little bit better. And I decided to get I think it's 1/2-inch whiteboard that you'd use for bookshelves, and a full-length 12-inch long bracket and stronger channels. So I took 2 channels, put them in one side of the closet, put my 12-inch brackets on each one, cut the boards to fit perfectly in there with a nice white trim facing out, slid those in, and oh, what a difference. It not only looks nicer, but I can pack my stuff in there neater and better. And I found that if you roll your clothes, that seems to be a lot easier to get them in and out than if you stack them and pack them flat on top of each other. Then when you're pulling them out, it's like trying to pull a piece of paper out from a stack. You know, it's just isn't gonna work. But that's what I did to my closet, and it freed up one of these bins, almost half of them, for all the stuff I had packed in there that I had to dig through. Having it this way, it works great. Now, now we come to my nemesis from phase 1, the Continental Tire Carrier back-breaking monstrosity. I could not get that thing off this rig fast enough after dealing with it on the first trip. But then I had to think, well, gosh, for where the heck I'm going to be going, because I like to go way the hell out in the mountains, up into the hills to ghost towns or down valleys on 28 miles of dirt road out into some place where the Indians made the buffaloes jump off a cliff. Yeah, places like that. But people who like natural history and the Western movement that are into that kind of interest do. So, yeah, okay. Anyway, I searched and searched on the internet like I do for everything, and finally found a company that specifically made a tire carrier for Sprinter vans like I had. And the best part is those things were built to pop right on the framework of the rear door and use the fixtures that were already there. The Al Industries spare tire rack allowed me to carry my full-size spare tire with me and still have easy access to both rear doors without having to mess with a blasted Continental tire carrier. The next thing I had to have fixed were the little piston stays in these overhead cabinets. The thing was like a long, a little metal pencil basically and a piston, and them things were shot. You'd lift it up, it wouldn't even stay against the ceiling. And I'd reach in, get something, turn around, then walk in, and bang, right into my forehead. Poof, nice crease. The darn thing would go just far enough to whack you in the head when you turned around to go in and get something else. Well, after several dents in my forehead, I said, that sucks, I'm changing that. So I did my research. I found that some of the Pleasure Wave models newer than mine were using a stronger, more adjustable torque one. So I ordered those and had those ready to be put in along with everything else I was collecting for my phase 2 of improvements. And they work great. They're able to tighten when they get loose where the little pistons weren't. So these have worked out great. I don't bang my head anymore. They stay up when I put them up, and if they start to sag, I can slightly tighten them. And I tell you, it's saved my forehead many times now. Another thing I finally had replaced was after I had my exterior deoxidized, cleaned, and shined, I had this real dingy, ugly porch light. Like, oh man, talk about an eyesore. I had that thing taken off, a nice new white cover, and a clean lens put on, and boy, it looks great. Little things like that make a big difference. Now, some people think a TPM, a tire pressure monitor, is a waste of money. To me, it's an ounce of prevention. And when I'm trucking down the Arizona or Utah freeway going 75 or 80 miles an hour in the summer, and the highway is hot enough to cook an egg on, I want to know what that's doing to my tires, because I'd rather be warned I'm going to have a blowout or a flat rather than be surprised at freeway speeds. So to me, a tire pressure monitor is well worth it. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. Now, the only tricky thing I had was getting the darn thing to sync. And that might be because I'm not so techie, but heck, if I could do it, believe me, anybody can. So I would say they're well worth the money, no matter what you hear. Another improvement I made was to get rid of that doggone batwing antenna for the TV this thing had from 2007. That thing was like antique. You had to get up inside and crank the darn thing up, and then you had to go click, 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 click. And I had turned the TV around to face the forward cab, so when I'm clicking that damn thing around, I could tell when I'm getting a good signal. Now that was too 1960s to me. It kind of reminded me of rabbit's ears. So I did my research, and I found an antenna called the King Jack antenna, which used the exact same location, the exact same wires, and was better rated than the doggone old Batwing. Plus, it has dials that actually tell you where the strongest signals are coming from, and it has a little knob that goes click, 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 click. So easy. And you're not cranking the damn thing up and cranking it down before you go. Yeah, maybe it makes a little wind noise when you're zipping down the highway because it's not flat. But I'd rather take that than crappy reception and having to crank some daggone thing like I'm trying to start a Model T.
Well, excuse me, just a minute. I just looked at this video after I made it, and I'm going, holy cow, this thing's long. So I decided it's best for everyone's attention span that I split this thing in 2 parts, and we'll be able to watch the entire thing in 2 segments and learn all there is about what I've done to my rig. So let's get back to the previously scheduled program, shall we?